Creepy Peeps. I am Tanisha, and I am from the Creepy Kingdom Network, and I am super excited to be here today. First off, we want to say a huge thanks to the Horrific Network for inviting Creepy Kingdom to take part in this year's Halfway to Halloween. So excited. We're halfway there. If you're unfamiliar with us at Creepy Kingdom, we have been covering and creating all things creepy since 2011. So we just celebrated our 10th anniversary last year, which is huge. Through our articles, podcasts, videos, live streams, we have been covering the creepy side of Disney, theme parks, films, series, and books. And through Creepy Kingdom Studios, we've even produced several films, such as Foolish Mortals, which is a documentary about Haunted Mansion fans and the Haunted Mansion fandom. So if you're a huge Haunted Mansion fan, check that out. And then we have an upcoming true crime paranormal documentary called Death is With Me that you'll want to stay tuned for. So we're really excited about that. One of our aforementioned podcasts, as I mentioned, we cover the creepy side of books as well. And in our live streams, we have our Creepy Book Club podcast. Over the past few years, myself and my co-host, who unfortunately could not be here with me today, she is my Wicked Witch of the East to my Wicked Witch of the West, Gretchen, and we have been working through the Disney Villains series by Serena Valentino. And so I am super excited today that I have the opportunity to get to interview the author herself. Please welcome along with me, Serena Valentino.
Hi, Tanisha.
Hi, Serena. I'm excited I get to talk to you today. Every time I get to talk to you.
I'm always excited to talk to you. I'm sorry Gretchen and James aren't here, but I love seeing your beautiful face. I'm excited to be on the show.
Yours too. I know we do miss our co-host for sure, but we're still going to have fun. So, and hopefully we honor their spirit here with us.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, let's just dive into it. So as I mentioned, we've been talking a lot at Creepy Kingdom about your phenomenal book series about the Disney villains. So for those who may be unfamiliar or have heard of them but weren't quite sure what they're about, can you kind of in a nugget explain what is the Disney Villains series?
Oh, I hate answering. I hate doing this. I'm like the worst talking about my work, but basically I tell the backstories of all the various villains. There's been quite a few so far, and the connective thread that brings all of the stories together is this trio of witches called the Odd Sisters, who have meddled in the lives of the various villains in the pantheon of Disney villains that I have decided I want to write about. So, we started off with the Wicked Queen from Snow White. We learn her story, how she became vain and obsessed with the man in the mirror, became obsessed with him, telling her that, she's beautiful, what her issues with Snow White were. And then we move on to the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. And I know everyone's like, oh, but wait, the Beast isn't a villain. It's like, well, yeah, he is. Watch like the first few minutes of the movie. He was a jerk. He got cursed. He's a beast. But it's more of a redemption arc for him. Belle basically wins the day. She's the hero of that story. And she, unlocks him from his curse. So after the Beast was Ursula. We got a chance to tell behind the scenes, like her story. And it just goes on. There's Maleficent, there's Gothel, there's Tanisha, help me out.
Gothel, Ursula, Maleficent, Evil Queen.
The Wicked Queen, and we did Lady Tremaine. I think Lady she was
Tremaine.
Lady Tremaine.
Cruella.
Cruella was very different from the rest of the series. I wrote it like an autobiography, so it was totally in her voice, and it was a blast to do. But now we're back to like the regular narrative. Captain Hook is coming this summer in July. And we're gonna, we missed the Odd Sisters book. So in between those books, there was a book that was dedicated specifically to the Odd Sisters and what their background is. And we kind of left things like a bit on a cliffhanger with what was going on. And then we go into Cruella, and the Odd Sisters weren't involved, and readers are like, oh my God, what's happening with the Odd Sisters? So we touched a little bit about they were involved in the Lady Tremaine story, but not as much as I think readers were hoping. And they're kind of back full swing with the Captain Hook book. And the book that I'm outlining now that's going to be after the Captain Hook book, which is super exciting, is going to be really like also involving the Odd Sisters. So for those who, I rambled on like crazy, but for those who aren't familiar with this series, it's basically like I got a chance to make up, what their origins were, how it was they became the people they did, like what was their background, what was their motivations, what happened to them in life that led them down the path that we know them from the films.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Does that make sense? You agree, Tisha?
I do. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love the series, is because it gives so much more, rather than the villains the Disney villains just sort of being these mustache twirling, like villains for the sake of villainry type characters. You've given them a why. You've given, like, even though the things they're doing are still cruel and messed up.
Right. And now I'm imagining all the characters twirling mustaches. Now, like every single one of them twirling. I can't help it. Sorry, go ahead.
Lady Tremaine.
Twirling her mustache right now
while petting her cat.
In my mind.
Absolutely.
She's like, Lucifer, what do you think of my mustache?
Lucifer. Yes, definitely. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one of one of the many reasons I love reading your books is, again, the why, and like really feeling the villains feel real, if that makes sense, as I'm reading your books. So you mentioned the Odd Sisters, and this is one of, if not the greatest invention in your books, is these Odd Sisters that are sort of the central focus, in a sense, of the through line of the book series. That's right. The word I'm looking for. So if you can explain a little bit about like what inspired you to create these Odd Sisters characters and have them sort of be this kind of through line driving force in all the Disney villain stories.
Well, in the first, we didn't know for sure if it was going to be a series when I wrote the first book. When I wrote the Snow White, like Wicked Queen story, and it was like my first book for Disney, and I was very much aware of the fact that I was writing like IP that wasn't mine. But the editor that I was working with really wanted me to embrace this and make this my own story and put my own imprint on it and make me feel like it was mine. And he encouraged me in every way to do so. Previous to doing the Disney books, I was doing the series of books called Nightmares and Fairy Tales, which was various retellings of fairy tales. And they had a connective thread of this doll named Annabelle that went from person to person. And we learned each fairy tale, each horror story from her point of view. She was sort of like the narrator, or like a Rod Serling, if you will, like, because the stories were kind of like a combination between like Twilight Zone and like in fairy tale retellings. So anyway, I digress. I wanted something new and different that put sort of like my stamp on the Snow White story that we all knew. And so the Odd Sisters just sort of popped in my mind, and I thought, well, how interesting would it be if Snow White had these weird like cousins that like came to visit, and what, and as like grew in my brain as I was writing the story, they just became more intertwined. Like as I was going, I didn't really have like an outline or anything for this book. I was just writing it like stream of consciousness. Oh, yay. Hello, James.
Hi, James.
We hope you're feeling better, James.
Yes.
So they kind of grew with me, like while I was writing the story, and we weren't sure how well the book was going to be received. We didn't know if like people would like a book about villains, like the backstory of the villain. And Disney was cool and was like, hey, do you want to write another one? And the first thing I thought was like, how are the Odd Sisters going to be involved in this one? And it was really sort of like the jumping point. Like it just made sense to me because I wanted all the villains to live in the same universe. I wanted them to know about each other, but I didn't want to mash them up in the way that like that TV show, like Once Upon a Time does. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted to, I don't even think that show was around, honestly. So I'm talking in retrospect. Because I don't think that TV show was around when I started writing these books. But like when the TV show did come out and I was writing the books, I'm like, I don't want to put like all these villains together, but I want something that will connect them. And the Odd Sisters felt like a good ambassador, like kind of like how, Harry Potter introduced us to all these like incredible characters and all these incredible places, and he is sort of like what brought everybody like together in a way. Like that's kind of like how I thought of how the Odd Sisters and their legend and their mythos just grew like as I was writing each story, and it became a little bit more meddlesome.
I love it, and I'm here for it. I love every time the Odd Sisters show up. It's always like some juicy scene. There's always something's about to go down every time.
They're the worst. They're always doing bad things. I can't even tell you how excited I am. Like the book that I'm outlining, of course, that I can't tell you anything about, but like it's kind of cool because for the first time, I'm gonna just spill a little bit of tea right now. For the first time, a villain is messing with the Odd Sisters. And yeah. So you're gonna be like, what?
How are they gonna taking their own medicine here?
You'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of like the big theme of the book right now. I'm in the middle of outlining it right now. And the big thing is like the Odd Sisters are getting messed with. It's going to be fun just to see their reaction. And this is like the timeline for those who are familiar with the series. I know you are, Tanisha. This timeline in the series would be right before Maleficent does her fairy exams, before she turns into a dragon and destroys the fairylands, like right before that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I could knowing the timeline, I'm like, all right, right. Okay.
So the Odd Sisters aren't quite as bad as they get later on in the series. They haven't this is like when the original Cersei is still alive, and they haven't destroyed themselves to create a new Cersei. So they're not in their full power capacity. You know what I mean? They aren't as maniacal and crazy. I mean, they're like Snow White, like how they were in Snow White. They're still evil witches, but they are beyond redemption.
They've never been the most amazing people, right. Gold star people, that's for sure. I also want to give a little plug too. So like I mentioned, we do our creepy book club, and we've been sort of going through the whole book series up to this point. And when we did the Odd Sisters episode, we decided, myself, Gretchen, and the founder of Creepy Kingdom, co-founder of Creepy Kingdom, James H. Carter II. I'm sorry, he'll be upset if I don't say the full name.
Forget the second.
Yes, the second. That's very important. We all cosplayed as the three Odd Sisters, and it was a pretty epic live stream. There was all kinds of shenanigans, which is a great inside joke. So much shenanigans. You'll know what I'm talking about if you go back and watch that stream.
Nobody knows what we're doing right now. But I'm just saying, from my point of view, I had heard that the Creepy Book Club was doing reviews of my books. And so I would watch it after the fact, because they put, you put all your reviews up on YouTube. And I was like, wow, these people are awesome. These are people I'd probably want to be friends with. And so when I decided to watch live, and I was typing in because they're always trying to guess plots. They're super readers. They get all the little clues. They get all of the little Easter eggs that I throw in. They come up with these amazing theories. And I was like, you know, drinking whiskey and typing. And I was just like, nope, yes, and giving them like, you know, lots of little feedback here or there. And I think in conversation, I was like, y'all need to dress as the Odd Sisters, like for the Odd Sisters one. And so I watched that live. I watched that live, and it was I could not stop laughing. It was like the funniest thing. James doing Lucinda of the Odd Sisters, and I've been thinking of James all day because I'm like crazy for Animal Crossing. Like I play like Animal Crossing like in all my downtime, and I just created like a Lucinda character like in this cemetery. Like I'm like imagining it's James. Like I'm
doing
like,
his hello. I can't do it justice. James, hello.
Yeah.
So
That was
great.
very fun. That was a very fun show.
It was hilarious. So if you haven't seen it, go back and check it out because it was great. I had so much fun. I'm hoping maybe one day we bring back the Odd Sisters cosplay and do another episode of the Odd Sisters.
I would not complain. And you look beautiful. Like I know we give. Oh, there's Gozer. My dog Gozer's barking, of course. Yeah, you guys look so beautiful as the Odd Sisters. Like I know we keep talking about James because he was incredible, Lucinda, but you and Gretchen were great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I always love like dressing up and having an excuse to dress up. So it was great. So you had mentioned your next villain is Hook, your new book, Never Never, continuing on this villain series. It's going to be out July 19th.
Yeah, July 19th.
So mark your calendars, folks, or it's available for pre-order. So
it is, yeah. It's available for pre-order. It's hit number one like a couple times so far in pre-orders on Amazon, which is always like mind-blowing and exciting that people are so enthusiastic for the series. I know Hook is like a favorite character for a lot of people. I know that like Peter Pan is a favorite movie. One of the things that I'm trying to make clear to readers is that I'm not covering like events from the film. Actually, this is all like pre like Neverland. I mean, I show like what happens when they get to Neverland, and I show like basically everything that leads up to Hook getting his, like how he got his hook, how he got the name Captain Hook. And then like right before the events from the film are about to happen, that's where the story ends, because we already know what happened. We already know what happened in the film. So yeah.
Excited.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do the whole like, I do cover like a little bit of stuff when he was like young, but like really the story takes off like once he graduates college and decides he wants to be a pirate. Like who graduates college is like,
who doesn't?
So the story goes is that when, James was a little boy, as one does, they fall out of their pram, like on a walk with the nanny. And everybody knows in England, when you fall out of your pram and you're a boy, you go to Neverland. So James went to Neverland for 6 days. And the mythos is that if you don't get claimed by the seventh day, then you stay in Neverland, you become a lost boy. But he got claimed by his mother on the 6th day. So from that point on, he's just obsessed with getting back to Neverland. He can't get the images of it out of his mind. He wants to go back, but he can't figure out how to do that. So he gets it in his head that the best way to probably do that is to become a pirate, because, pirates sell all over the place. They have like wild stories. They meet all kinds of interesting people. And he thinks that's probably his best bet to find a way to get to Neverland. And he does, because he gets sent off on this wild adventure to the Many Kingdoms. And for people who don't know what the Many Kingdoms are, that's the kingdom of the Disney universe that I've created. And, he's got to go and talk. He gets summoned by the Odd Sisters to bring them a cake, and so that they can help him in exchange. They will help him find Neverland. So, Yeah, so it's fun. There's like, Blackbeard is in the story. He like hooks up with Blackbeard. He's on Blackbeard's ship for a while. They have like a big battle with a Kraken. They have a big battle with like another like rivalry, like, pirates. It's like a high adventure like pirate story. I really wanted to establish like who James Hook was before he got to Neverland, because when he gets to Neverland, he's pretty cowardly. He's afraid of that crocodile. He's kind of bumbling. Pan is always, Peter Pan's always like thwarting him. And I was like, it'd be really cool if James was like a cool pirate before he got to Neverland, but there's like a reason. There's a reason why he ends up the way that he does, and it's kind of sad. I mean, as a lot of my stories are, he went to Neverland as a baby. He just wants to go back. He wants to be friends. Like he wants to be friends with the lost boys. He wants to reclaim this part of his life, and he becomes like a total book nerd like as a result, and he becomes a bit pretentious and wordy, and he has a hard time making friends as a result, and so Jay, like when he's trying to get on a ship with Blackbeard, I mean, you can imagine like pretentious James, like, I know all manner of cartography and the different aspects of ships, and therefore you need to put me on your ship. And they're just like, what is even like going on? So there's a lot of humor and fun and adventure like in the story, and the Odd Sisters play a huge part actually. And so does some other characters that I almost mentioned that I shouldn't, because it would give away spoilers. So
okay. Well, it gives us some juicy tidbits to be really excited for. So I'm here for it. Yeah, I'm excited for just the take. Like we've obviously done a lot of like the princess fairy tales and whatnot. So I'm excited for this sort of kind of pirate adventure that we're going to get in Hook, that we haven't really seen before in the previous books in the series. So I think that'll be a really cool setting to see, especially the Odd Sisters in, right?
I'm really into pirates, and I've done like a lot of research for a graphic novel that I'm working on. And so when I sat down to write James's story, James Hook's story, I didn't have to do any research, which was kind of awesome, because I'm like, I know all the technical terms for the ships and pirate language and, all that stuff. But it was really fun, like incorporating like mythology, real pirates, like weird, obscure sort of like history stuff, because James is such a history nerd, like, that, and I really wanted him to try to like impart his knowledge to the crew, and just have the crew on Blackbeard's ship to be like, like, can you stop giving us Latin lessons right now? Like, we need you to man the cannon, like, so yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'm excited. So obviously this being all about halfway to Halloween and horror and the spooky side, one of the things I also love about your books is there's so much amazing imagery in your books, particularly like themes of horror that I love. I've joked with you about like there are some scenes in your book that I wish someone would paint for me so I can hang it on my wall. And so you described the Deadwoods. There's like this epic scene that I won't give away with like witches appearing in various cool ways that I'm like, I want to see that. So I just wanted to know a little bit like what are some of your horror inspirations, whether in writing the book or just that you're a huge fan of in life?
That's a long list. Like I love like Universal monsters. I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, Basil Rathbone. Like I love like, Dracula and Frankenstein and and Twilight Zone. And then I also love some of the like lower key, visual stuff like Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. I wouldn't necessarily call it horror, but it is spooky. I kind of like that sort of hurdle, between like horror, like beauty and horror. Like I have a tendency to really kind of gravitate to ghost stories and horror. Today they wouldn't be considered horror stories, but back in the day, like they would have. And I think all art is subjective. And if I want to call, Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast a horror story, I can. You know what I mean? Like, because in a way, it's really scary. You're like going into this, castle. There's all these like statues that like come alive, and it's kind of scary. I really am. I'm just kind of like into a lot of like the older stuff. Of course, I love reading things like Oscar Wilde's like Picture of Dorian Gray, and I love like Poe and things like that. And I'm just aesthetically geared towards a lot of like the older films, and so I think that sort of shines through when you read my books, when I'm describing morning rooms with like velvet drapes and, overstuffed cushions, because I'm thinking of, Bela Lugosi and a, drawing room with his pipe or an ascot, you know what I mean? So those are huge influences. My dad is a super big horror fan. He's still, he always has been, like ever since I was a kid. And so I grew up watching like Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, Outer Limits, like that kind of stuff, like with him. Same with the whole, the Hammer films. And he loves like the Universal monsters. So we would watch all that stuff. But then any like horror film that came out in the theater, he took me to go see. And so I just grew up like loving it. So it's like thanks to him. So I mean, those influences are always going to sort of, I think, influence my work, because that's what inspires me. I love that type of imagery, and I love to bring the beauty of horror into my stories.
And it comes through. I mean, yeah, like I said, I want paintings of some of the scenes from your books on my wall, just how they're playing in my.
I know you're thinking about like the Wicked Queen like dream sequence where the man in the mirror is like climbing through the mirror that's broken and like slicing his hands like and legs on like jagged pieces of glass. I know that. I know
yes. It's just, yeah, like literally I have a movie when I'm reading your books, and I think that's how I read in general. I just kind of have a movie happening in my head where I'm like visualizing and yes, like you were saying, like those feelings of sort of the classic horror, the like sort of beauty gothic scenery definitely comes through. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I'm glad you have a movie in your head. That makes me happy. I have a movie in my head when I'm writing it, and I always wonder, like, I wonder if the reader's movie and my movie are the same.
I mean, of course, it's always probably subjective. So maybe the way I visualize things, you're like, oh, that's not how it's playing in my head. But I mean, like I said, you really described this very vivid picture that I get this very visceral image that's happening where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can see that and I want it to be visualized.
That's so
like,
awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah. So speaking of villains, another really cool villain book. It's not necessarily attached to the villain series, if I'm correct, but it's a really cool project that I'm excited about. It looks very cute, if you can call Disney villains cute. You have an illustrated villains book coming out later on. How the Villains Ruined Christmas. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, How the Villains Ruined Christmas. It's like this cute little illustrated book for young kids. It's definitely not connected to my villains series, but it is a Disney villain. It's like, that's the villains from the Disney villain pantheon, not from my stories. But it's basically like a cute little book about how the villains ruin Christmas. And when I first talked to the editor that approached me about doing this book, she was like, we were hoping to do sort of like a kid's rhyming book, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I could write a rhyming book. Like, I don't know if that's my jam, like writing like, rhyming book. And for somehow, like when I sat down to write it, I was like rhyming, and it came like super naturally. And I wrote it like, I don't know, in a couple of hours, maybe like less. Like I wrote it like really quickly, and I was like, how about this? And she's like, oh my God, yes, that's what we're looking for. So it was a fun little book. It's how these various villains sort of meddled in their own special brand way in their particular like regions, how they ruined like Christmas. So like the Wicked Queen, I think, like puts like a spell on the apple pies to try to put people to sleep, and then Maleficent sends like her goons to destroy all the presents like at the Christmas celebration at the castle, and Captain Hook like tries to throw all the presents for the lost boys like into the lagoon. Like they're just doing all these. The funniest one is Hook and Hook and Smee. No, wait, no, it was Corella. Corella and her henchmen like dress up as like carolers in Santa. So like Corella's like dressed as Santa, and like the henchmen are dressed as carolers to like distract them while she's trying to shove like the puppies, like all the Dalmatian puppies, like into her Santa sack. So it's just like, and like Hades is trying to catch like Christmas trees on fire. He's like being an arsonist, like lighting Christmas trees on fire. So it's just like all the like different shenanigans, like in this like cute little kid, like rhymey book about how the villains ruin Christmas. But ultimately they get thwarted. Like, like the kids are like, we like that the Christmas tree is on fire. Hades thinks we'll roast some marshmallows. And they're like, like that kind of stuff. It was a fun little book, to write.
I love it. It looks so cute. I'm like, I'm just gonna buy it to have it on my shelf. It'll be a cute.
The
little,
artwork
like,
is so amazing. I wish I had the artist's name. I think it's Joey Chu. I hope I'm remembering his name correctly. But yeah, he did an amazing job on the illustrations. I felt so lucky to be working with him and have him illustrate that story. He's such an amazing, like stylized, style of artwork.
Definitely. Yeah. It looks so cute. And that one comes out September 6th.
It does.
So yeah, if you want to, I think, is it available for pre-order right now?
It is. Yeah, it's
okay.
available for pre-order now, and it comes out the 6th, just in time if you do your, holiday shopping early. If, you and people imbibe in those holidays.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be a cute little like holiday read, especially if you're a big Disney villains fan, or
right.
Just for like spooky Christmas. If you want to spookify Christmas, we're all about that.
Yeah, a lot of my readers are like, "Oh, I'm so happy I can like show my kids one of your books."
Oh. Like, yeah, maybe there might be the Disney villain series might be a little too scary for some of the little ones, right. But this one looks really cute. Like I said, I have a 3-year-old nephew, so I'll probably gift him that for Christmas.
Oh,
so I usually buy him books and stuff for Christmas because he has a lot of toys.
Of course.
So yeah. All right, I'm really excited though. Of all that you are a very busy woman this year, so. In addition to those 2 books, I'm so excited for your other project that is coming. I want to dive into. So if you are a Sleepy Hollow fan, a fan of the Sleepy Hollow Legend and Tale like I am, you might want to, bookmark, pre-order your other book. You are bringing your readers into the world of Sleepy Hollow with your book, Raising the Horseman. And you are sort of diving into the legend of Sleepy Hollow, but you're telling it from a really cool perspective, which I'm really excited for. So what can you tell us about how you're sort of entering into this world of Sleepy Hollow and what angle you're entering into this legend from?
Right. I mean, so the story is happening in two different timelines simultaneously. Our main character, who is modern day, is an ancestor of Cat Van Tassel. And those who aren't familiar with the Sleepy Hollow legend, Cat Van Tassel is basically the young woman who Ichabod Crane is trying to woo when he comes to. So let's just tell the story of Sleepy Hollow really quick, right? So, Ichabod Crane is a young man and he's a schoolmaster, and he saunters into Sleepy Hollow, decides, I'm going to teach school. He meets Katrina Van Tassel, who will inherit her, family's estate and home, and they're the richest people like in the county. And the mother bakes some really good pies, and everybody knows Ichabod Crane is really into eating pies. Like, if you've ever read the original Sleepy Hollow story or watched the adaptation of the Sleepy Hollow story by Washington Irving for Disney, which is really cool. It has music and lyrics by Bing Crosby, and it's narrated by Basil Rathbone, which is like super awesome for horror fans, right? So it's basically all told from Ichabod's point of view. How he gets to Sleepy Hollow, he becomes friends with Cat Van Tassel. Cat's longtime boyfriend Brom is not down with Ichabod flirting with his girl. So he tells the story of the Headless Horseman because he kind of picks up that Ichabod Crane is superstitious and scared of ghosts. He gets super worked up. He goes home from their big ball that they have that night when they hear this, he hears these stories, and he is confronted by the Headless Horseman, who essentially chases him out of town, never to be seen again, so that Cat and her long-term boyfriend Brom can get married and all is well. So in my story, we're with Cat Van Tassel, one of Katrina's ancestors, and she's kind of in the same boat as Katrina that we know from the original tale. She's with somebody who she's been with forever, somebody that her family approves of, who's pressuring her to get married right after high school. It's and she's like, hey, I want to go to college. I have other things that I want to do. I don't even know if I want to get married. And so she's being pressured to take over this state when her parents leave, marry this long-term boyfriend, and she's very resistant. She's in this town, if you can imagine growing up in a place like Sleepy Hollow, all you ever hear is ghost stories. It's everybody in town has a ghost story. They claim to have spoken to a ghost. The high school is supernatural oriented. The town is perpetually decorated for Halloween. And while this sounds magical to you and I, Tanisha,
it sounds good to me. I don't know, understanding
right. That is just she's over it. And I think, the reason why is because I think, she's terrified. She's terrified that ghosts are real. She's terrified that she's gonna be stuck in Sleepy Hollow forever and never experience any life outside of this place. And so her way of dealing is just to say ghosts don't exist, that she doesn't believe any of it. And she gets her hands on her great grandmother many times over, Katrina Van Tassel's diary, and she starts to read it. So that's why I said we have two different timelines going on. We're reading about what happened from Katrina's point of view, during the time period in which the Sleepy Hollow legend originates. And then we're also seeing what's going on in Cat's life. And Cat is starting to see the similarities between Katrina's life and her own, both of them being expected to marry the people that, that their families want them to marry. Both of them meeting somebody new in town who may or may not be being honest with them, who might be gaslighting them. And it's about Cat, kind of coming to terms with who she is, like what she believes in, and unlocking like a huge secret about the real legend of Sleepy Hollow, the real legend of the Headless Horseman, and how these two women in two different timelines were able to raise his spirit. And that's why it's called Raising the Horseman, because they raised the spirit of the Headless Horseman.
Ooh, so will we see some Headless Horseman action potentially in this?
Oh yeah, there is. Like, I don't know what kind of action you're referring to, but
he's like, I'm just going through a drive-through on my horse.
Yeah, there's some definite. There's lots of spooky ghosts and Headless Horseman. There's possession. There's a lot of different scary aspects like happening in this story. But it's like almost all of them are spoilers, and I don't want to give stuff away. Writing scary stuff is like my favorite thing. Like I think you and Gretchen like pointed out, like in my Mother Knows Best book, if anybody who's watching this is familiar with Mother Knows Best, like the really, like I feel like I thrive when I'm telling that kind of story, when I'm talking about like, you know, what a place looks like, how it makes you feel, like how scary it is. Like I was fully like in that place when I was writing Raising the Horseman. And after my editor read like the first draft, she was like, this is the book you were meant to write. Like, this is the book that you were always meant to write. It's like your best book. And it made me so happy because like, even though it is an adaptation of, you know, Washington Irving's story, it is told in a completely different way. I've never seen anybody do thus far, you know, previously, you know, tell the story, at least in film, from Katrina's point of view. Like, it's always from Ichabod's point of view. And like, when it comes down to it, she's the most important person in the story. It's going to be her friggin' like estate. You know, she's the one that's inheriting, you know, so I created like a totally different sort of world, like different sort of Sleepy Hollow, where it's like a, you know, each generation of the various Van Tassels, like the first born girl is always named Katrina. So it's like this long line of Katrinas that inherit. And so it's the men that are like marrying and like there, you know, to support them. Because I just felt like the films have been so geared towards Ichabod. And I just, you know, and Ichabod is totally in the story, but he's a fool. And if you look at him in the movie, he's kind of a fool. You know, he's just like munching pies and, you know, getting scared of shadows. And, you know, I made him like just very like sort of pompous and gaslighty and not really like likable. But poor Katrina, it's like, what is she working with? She's with Brom, who's a bit like Gaston, really, right? You know, he's a bit like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. And she's like, well, at least I have someone to talk to who reads, you know. So
that's the bar. That's the bar. Well, he reads, so.
Well, he reads and, you know, vocabulary and, you know, and so she gets a little swept away by this like intelligent guy. He's worldly. He's been to places that she's never been to. He tells her like all the things that she's ever wanted to hear. And he sort of represents like, you know, her ticket out of Sleepy Hollow, because like modern day Kat, Katrina also wanted to move away and make a life for herself outside of Sleepy Hollow. So both ladies' stories are very, very parallel. I'm looking forward to seeing what people think of the book, like when it comes out in September. Also on September 6th.
Yeah, I was gonna say it comes out September 6th. It's also available for pre-order, so definitely get on that, folks. So yeah, I also wanted to get into real briefly, because I know we only have a couple minutes left. you said there's a couple of timelines, and can you tell us how you kind of like maybe added in some fun stuff of like what a modern day, you kind of mentioned like the high school and whatnot, but what is modern day in the 2020s or 20 teens, not sure,
Right.
Sleepy Hollow look like?
The 2020s. It's a lot like modern Sleepy Hollow now, but my version of it, the high school, everybody wears like, it's a very, my version of Sleepy Hollow is like very antiquated, but with like, they're all still steeped in superstition. They all want things to be exactly the way they were back in Katrina's day, but with like weird modern things like thrown in, so like Kat's favorite cafe is like called the Flaming Pumpkin. And, she's just kind of like, she's kind of like typical teenager in the sense that she's just sort of like over it. She's like, oh, plastic bats hanging on the ceiling. Like, why do we like why? But why does everything have to be perpetually decorated for Halloween? And like as I'm writing this, I'm thinking like, why wouldn't she like this? But I thought, but I was thinking about it. It's like, but if you grow up around that, maybe you wouldn't like it so much. But then she meets this really awesome girl who is really like into all that, and they like get this like really cool friendship and this really great bond, and Kat eventually starts to remember that she really does kind of love this stuff, and she may not be as a non-believer as she would like people to believe, and that the reasons behind sort of disbelieving go really far back into like her childhood and like some things that happened to her when she was younger that made her want to disbelieve in the supernatural. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm the worst. I shouldn't do interviews. I'm bad at talking about my work. Like I just can't do it.
I think the complete opposite, because when I get to chat with you about your work, I think I love it. It's great to kind of
like I'm not expressing it well somehow. Like I'm fine behind the computer. I'm writing the story, but yeah. But thank you. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. Well, to wrap us up here, we unfortunately are out of time, but I want to real quickly announce we are very excited that we are going to be adding a new show to our Creepy Kingdom podcast network starring Serena Valentino. It's going to be called Tea Time with Serena. So keep a lookout for that this summer. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things that Serena loves, talking about her books, talking about Disney, talking about villains, talking about spooky things. It's going to be great. And I'm so looking forward to getting to do that with you. I want to thank you so much, Serena, for your time today and being with us today. I always love talking to you. I love just hearing your process and your creation that I get to enjoy. And then I have the privilege of getting to dive into it even deeper with you. So I'm really honored and happy I get to do that. If you're not already, please subscribe and follow Creepy Kingdom on all social media platforms. We are on YouTube, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we're on TikTok. Obviously, if you have any podcast apps, check out our whole podcast series. We have a variety of shows about theme parks, books, movies, etc. You can stay up to date on Serena's book series and all of her upcoming releases by following her on Twitter at Serena Valentino and Instagram at Blackbird Pirate. And as always, remember to keep it creepy from here at Creepy Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to have a sip of tea.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll just chill, keep it spooky.